SilverEfex is part of the Nik family of plugins, and it's probably one of the most capable black and white conversion tools available on the market today. It goes way beyond what you can achieve in Lightroom, and I've been testing this on my own landscapes over the last few weeks, and although it's great, it's not a plugin that I'm going to be using every day, and this video explains why. So black and white's not something I use a lot. I use it for very specific projects or sometimes client work, such as these images here, which were New Zealand panoramas, which client wanted to put it throughout a hotel as decor images in the bedrooms. Or I'll do projects like this one here, which is Italian street scenes I photographed a few years ago, and they just really suited black and white because it gave it kind of a timeless feel. So I'll start by showing you quickly my conversion process to black and white in Lightroom, and then we'll compare that with what we can do in SilverEfex. So I've selected these three landscape images because I know they'll convert quite well to black and white because they're quite simple compositions, and they also have quite good color separation, and you'll see the reason why that really helps in a minute. So let's start with this image here. Just click the black and white conversion button, and then the real magic happens if you go down to black and white. The way I like to work is use the targeted adjustment tool, which lets you click and drag on the image and adjust particular colors for luminosity. So in this case I'm dragging on the blue sky, and that's really darkening the sky area. I could also drag on the yellowy landscape area, and that would darken or lighten that as well. You have to be a little bit careful about going too far because you can start to see halos or artifacts around the border areas. But that's a pretty good starting point, and from there I might further tweak contrast or exposure or highlights to my liking. You can actually see I've already had added a mask to this image when it was in color, so I like to get the image looking quite good in color before I go to black and white. And the other images are very similar. And I can actually add grain in Lightroom as well. If I go down to the effects panel, down the bottom you can see there's a grain slider. It's pretty basic, it's not like the film emulation grain that you can get in SilverEfex. It does a pretty good job, and you've got quite a bit of room for adjusting the size of the grain, the blurriness of the grain, and so on. So that's Lightroom. Let's have a look at SilverEfex Pro. You can get to SilverEfex Pro from a number of host applications, including Affinity, DxO's own Photolab 9, Photoshop. I'm going to work from Lightroom because that's where I keep my library of images. So the normal way to work once you've installed SilverEfex is to go to Edit and then down to Edit in Nik 9 SilverEfex. That will create an additional file, and you've got a choice of what sort of file you want to create, and you can open it up in the plugin then. However, I like to work in a non-destructive workflow way, and the only way I can work in SilverEfex Pro non-destructively via Lightroom is to go through Photoshop. So the way I prefer to work is to go Edit in, right down to Open as a Smart Object in Photoshop. This will open this image in Photoshop as a smart object, and from there I can go to Plugins, Nik Collection, SilverEfex, and that will open it up in the SilverEfex software. You can also access SilverEfex from this handy on-screen panel in Photoshop. I just need to click Open. There are a few settings you can set if you want to, but we're just going to open the standard image in SilverEfex. So let's have a little look at the interface. On the left hand side you have your various options, and on the right hand side you have your actual image adjustments. So if we start off with categories, if categories is closed, then all of the available presets show up in this scrolling menu. However, if you select categories on, you can actually narrow this list down, and this is quite handy because unfortunately you can't expand this category list to take up the whole screen, which would be very useful because if you have all presets available, there's a lot. I don't know how many, it must be approaching nearly 100, and it would be really handy to be able to view these full screen so you could do some proper comparisons, but unfortunately you can't. Let's start with a neutral preset. So a neutral preset just starts without any adjustments to the black and white conversion. Over on the right hand side here you can just see the histogram is the only thing applied. Now if we want to apply different manipulations to the black and white conversion, you go down to the next lot of panels, which is filters, and as you switch these on you'll see them show up in the right hand side, which is a really good way of working. So you only need to turn on those particular filters that you'll be using. So in my case, let's say I want to apply a color filter, which is the equivalent to Lightroom's adjustments, where you use color sliders to adjust the luminosity of particular colors. In SilverEfex it works a little bit differently. You basically select a color and then apply the strength that you want that to apply at. I've clicked on the yellow color, and that's effectively darkening the blue sky background, which is the opposite to Lightroom. If you adjust the blue color in Lightroom, which is a bit more intuitive, you adjust the luminosity of the blue. One thing I don't like about the Nik software is you can't apply color, you can only apply one color filter basically. So if I want to override this and apply the red filter, it cancels the adjustments you've made to the yellow filter and you effectively start again. You can also select the hues, a very precise hue to adjust the luminosity of a color. I prefer the Lightroom way of working where you can adjust each color individually, its luminosity in the final image. It just seems more intuitive to me. Next you have basic adjustments, which on the surface is the same as Lightroom's basic adjustments. However, what I found in practice is you have a lot more granular control. So for example, brightness works much the same as in Lightroom, except that down the bottom of this slider group you have dynamic brightness, which is intended to work more the way film works, which is much more subtle. So if I lower the brightness, it tends not to crunch the blacks as much as a basic brightness slider would. It has more of a gentle S-curve, which reflects the way film operates. And you find that in a lot of the adjustments here. For example, contrast adjustments, you have a thing called soft contrast, which applies contrast in a gentler sort of a way, kind of like increasing contrast would respond working with film. It's a bit more organic. Yeah, a lot of fine granular control. For example, in the structure adjustments panel here, you've got your basic structure, which is probably as close to clarity in Lightroom, except in SilverEfex you can target the highlights with that. You can target the midtones, or you can target the shadows. And you've also got a thing called fine structure, which probably is similar to texture in Lightroom, which brings out real fine detail. And you can apply any of these adjustments as a local adjustment. For example, if I use the automated selection, I could roll over parts of the image and it will select those. For example, if I roll over the sky, it selects the sky, and I could apply a structure adjustment to the sky and use any of the other sliders such as amplify blacks to further increase that contrast. So for me, if I wanted the ultimate control in black and white conversion, and if I have a set of images that I really want to get the most out of, I would definitely favor Nik SilverEfex. It just has much more granular control and it's much more powerful. If we go on through the remaining panels in SilverEfex, we have Selective Tones, which is quite simple, just basically targets the highlights, midtones, shadows or blacks. In Lightroom, these sliders are in the basic panel. And next, if we go on to Clearview, Clearview is the equivalent of dehaze in Lightroom, but it's much more subtle in SilverEfex, and I quite like the effect. It's almost a little bit too subtle. We could do it with a little bit more intensity. Then we have the toning panel, which is simply tinting your image. So if you wanted a sepia tone, you could very easily add that. Next we have Vignette, and Vignette comes with a number of presets which I found quite useful for just previewing what sort of vignette you could try as a starting point, and then once you have that starting point you can adjust it to your own taste. And then we have Burn Edges, which is an interesting one, which just applies a bit of degradation to the image. I found it's easier to use the presets to start with. It just pulls in a little bit of random darkening to the edges, and once you have a starting point you can go around each edge and adjust them separately. So a lot of control there. It's not something I would use a lot. The one that I would use more is probably Image Borders, which also comes with a number of presets, which is a really good way to start. And once you have picked a preset you quite like, you can use the sliders to further tweak it. And this is quite a good way to really stylize an image. The last two panels I want to look at in SilverEfex are particularly important because they are where a lot of the research has gone into SilverEfex, and that is film types and film grain branded. So let's start with film types. You can select from a lot of different profiled film types, and that will give you a really accurate emulation of that particular film. And they're split out into ISO. So as you go up through the ISO film categories, you'll find they get more grainy, as you would expect. Now, there's also the film grain branded panel, which my understanding is if you want to adjust the film type after the fact, after you've applied a particular film, this is where you can do that. So you can adjust the intensity of the grain size. So a lot of control here to really develop your own stylized look and then save that as a preset so you could apply it to a group of images or make it your particular style. So what do I like about SilverEfex? I like its incredible range of control and its film-like or organic feel to it. And I believe that's a design feature of SilverEfex over Lightroom. It definitely has a more filmic feel and more depth of control and adjustments than Lightroom does for black and white conversions. It also has an excellent preset ecosystem, so that's very useful for developing your own looks or styles for particular projects. What I don't like about SilverEfex is there doesn't seem to be any direct raw file support, so you do have to export a TIFF or a PSD every time you want to do a conversion, whereas in Lightroom I can take a raw file, convert it to black and white, save virtual copies which can be processed differently, so I can have variations of a black and white image without any additional overhead of creating a separate file each time. So it's a very non-destructive workflow. I don't get that in SilverEfex. I also don't like that I can't expand the presets panel, because I believe the presets is one of the really powerful areas of SilverEfex, but you really do need to see it full screen, so it's quite frustrating to have to scroll through them. You can't really do direct comparisons easily. And on a broader point, I think it pays to be deliberate if you're using black and white. Don't just use it as a salvage operation for images that you're not sure what to do with, because if you scatter the odd black and white throughout your portfolio, it just makes you look uncertain of what to do or unsure of what you're doing rather than showing any versatility. So for me, I'm going to stick mainly to color because I really enjoy color. But for specific projects where I want to work in black and white or a toned series of images, I certainly would reach for SilverEfex because I believe I can stylize images in a much more organic, beautiful sort of a way. It's very hard to describe. So what I've actually done to finish with is selected a few landscape images from my portfolio that I think will convert to black and white really well and put them through SilverEfex to see what I could get out of them. And this is what I've come up with. So thanks for watching. I'll see you in the next one.